Welcome, I'm Theolyn, and this is the fourth in my series that I call Meditation, Mysticism, Metaphysics, and finally Magic. So this is the magical episode, all about Harry Potter and things like that. Now, it's interesting to tack the word magic onto the end of all those other concepts, because magic has got quite a tricksy reputation. And indeed, it has been contrasted with mysticism in this sense that the mystical practitioner is described as someone who wants to surrender to the divine, to let go of their worldly addictions, their worldly goals, their worldly ambitions, and to surrender to the will of the divine or to the will of God. That would be an apt description of what a mystical practitioner is attempting. The magical practitioner, however, has been described as someone who wants to achieve worldly ambitions and to achieve goals, and in some senses bend the will of the divine to his or her own desires. So there's a very interesting contrast there. And that is why I think magic has had quite a tricksy, problematic, shall we say, reputation over the centuries. Because if you do your meditation or your vision board even, because you want something, that is kind of regarded as a secondary objective, possibly a lower objective to wanting to engage with the divine for no personal goal-oriented desire, just because you want to be there and be with divinity, to make contact with God or whatever. But if you practice magic, then you are conscientiously wanting something. And that, of course, would be ego-driven. There we have another problematic word, the ego. Generally speaking, it also got a bit of a bad press. Oh, we've got to bypass the ego, or we've got to reduce our egoic desires and become enlightened, and then we don't have egoic desires, and therefore everything will be lovely and special and beautiful because we've given up the ego. Well, as you can tell from the way I'm saying that, I think that's quite a trick to play on ourselves, because we definitely need an ego. I tend to use the expression everyday self because that gets us out of that loop that's been caused by people putting the ego in the naughty room. An everyday self is an essential part of being who we are, and we have to make sure that it's functioning in a healthy, holistic way, and then there will be no reason to put it in the naughty room. Let's get back to this concept of magic. When I talked about metaphysics, I consulted Wikipedia first, and I've done the same for this episode. And this is what Wikipedia says when you look at magic. In brackets, it says supernatural. Right. Magic is the application of rituals and actions that can subdue or manipulate natural or supernatural forces. And interestingly, they show a picture from the Rider-Waite tarot pack of the magician with his table of tools, his magical tools. And when we consider the magician compared with the mystic, we could think that the magician is that picture in the tarot, and the mystic might be like the hermit in the tarot, who's on an inward journey and he's looking for wisdom, whereas the magician is looking to succeed in the world using these magical tools. So when I teach meditation, I'm teaching people to go on the inner journey for their benefit. One wouldn't even bother to do it if we didn't think there was some benefit to it. We might do it out of curiosity. I think actually when I started, it was more curiosity than anything else, because I was only a teenager, 14, when I first tried meditation, and nobody had given me a list of the benefits, or your blood pressure will go down, or you'll be stress-free, or you'll cope with life better. Nobody had told me those things. So I was curious. So curiosity, or for some kind of sense of wholeness, might be one's motivations for learning to meditate. Now, in the ancient Eastern traditions of the Vedas, which do describe metaphysical concepts, we find in the yogic tradition, which is a series of rituals and actions, if you like, that's what yoga is. It's what yokes you to the metaphysical truth. You perform various rituals and actions, often with your own body. And in that tradition, the meditations that are given are directed towards achieving higher states of consciousness, but also very practical things like longevity, for example, or levitation. I don't know that that's very practical, but that's one of the things that the yogis liked to look forward to as a potential side benefit. They wanted to be able to lift themselves off the ground. I don't know where they were going to go, up a rope ladder perhaps, and show off and ask people to give them money. However, levitation is certainly associated with higher states of consciousness, and even in the Western mystical traditions, you get characters who spontaneously levitate. Teresa of Avila, the Catholic nun, was reputed to levitate during Mass, much to her embarrassment, and she would ask the nuns to sit on her habit so that she couldn't come off the floor. So let's put levitation to one side and have a think about the relationship between the concept of magic, manipulation, or subduing natural or supernatural forces, and how that connects to the practice of everyday meditation. Now, the reason that I'm bringing it into this series is because in some ways the Schaefer method, which I teach, incorporates a simple meditation practice, but adds in something which could be described as a magical practice. It incorporates bringing concepts into your mind while you're in a state of deep meditation, while you are close to the divine throne, sometimes called, the divine space, the divine arena, which is so vast, and you're on the edge of it when you meditate, you could introduce a concept, a conscious intention. Now, in some ways, introducing a conscious intention into your meditation is a magical act. It is taking on board the idea that your thoughts can make a difference, that your thoughts have some potency. That could take you back to the law of attraction. That's what the law of attraction says. Your thoughts have potency. Law of attraction and The Secret are both talking about magic. Think what you want, and sooner or later, somehow or another, in unexpected ways, it can arrive. That's magic. It might not happen immediately, like if you waved a Harry Potter wand, but it can happen. So with the Schaefer method, what I teach is a methodology for getting deep, deep, deep into those levels of consciousness where you go beyond your everyday self, but you hover on the edge of the divine. When you transcend your thoughts and your everyday self, you actually have no awareness. This is the curious, paradoxical thing about transcending, is that you know it's happened, but you didn't know it while it was happening. That's quite difficult to explain to somebody who hasn't had that experience, but that's what it is. You come back to yourself and think, oh, where was I? And then you realise that you've just gone beyond yourself, and then you're back. And you have no idea how long that change has been going on for. But while you're hovering on the edge of the transcendence, you have this sense in your whole being, a kind of vibrationary experience. And this is a kind of liminal space between coming back to your everyday self and really being focused on the consciousness that you need to act in the world, while at the same time you've got kind of one foot in the world beyond. I often think that we could liken it to standing on the edge of the sea, standing with one foot on the sand and the other foot in the bit where the water's coming in. We call this liminal. I call it the selvage edge, but then that's because I've been a dressmaker. So when you're on that edge, you could say, like a child standing on the edge of the water, I can throw my pebbles in, I can throw my seashells in, I can make my offerings. I can make my offerings to divinity. And in that process, I can very lightly, without a sense of demanding something, I can very lightly say, this is my play. I am playing like a child on the seashore of life. And in my game, I would like to bring this into my life. And with the Schaefer method, we use these little mystical characters, and each one represents one of those pebbles, one of those seashells. For example, one of them is deep peace. Another one is inner wisdom. Another one is abundant manifestation. So each one has got a little playful intention behind it. It's not a demand, and it's not really manipulating. It is participating. And I think if that comes from a loving heart and the desire to create beauty in the world, beauty in your own personal world, yes, and within your family and your circle of friends, but also in the world as a whole, then I don't see any harm in that magical activity. I don't see that that is something to be frowned upon or dismissed as manipulation. Because at that rate, everything that goes on is a manipulation, if you like, of the invisible threads of the great tapestry of life. Everything that's going on is weaving and flowing and participating in what's happening. So it is all magical. We can't get away from that magical activity. And if, with a willing and loving heart, we get engaged in those magical activities and put our offerings into the pool, into the ocean, which will then flow back to us. And then we put more in and it flows back to us. The blessings come out from our heart, the blessings come back into our heart and into our lives and to the lives of everybody. So for me, the journey from meditation is mystical. It's a mystical process. It brings me, and it will bring you, to realizations about metaphysical truths, which will either come to you as direct insights because you experience something, or perhaps because you meet a guide along the way, or in your daily life you come across just the right book that you need for some new understanding. And it will bring you to a place where you understand that everything you do is magical. Everything there is can be described as magical. And you can actively and lovingly participate in it. So I invite you to go to schaefermethod.com and find out more about the Schaefer method. Then you can start meditating. You can go on your mystical journey. Oh, and by the way, if you already meditate, it could still be of interest to you to watch that webinar that I've got up there, because I think it's quite an enlightening and will expand your own understanding of what you already do, and it may make you feel that you could go deeper. And when you go deeper, you get to understand that you are participating in something magical, and you will feel joyful and delightful that you can find a methodology for doing that. So I hope you've enjoyed these 4 videos, and as I say, please go to schaefermethod.com to find out more. Many blessings.